My name's Carol, and I've been reading through the Haunted Places section of the site. I wanted to give you some additional info on Peters Woods, Fairburn, Georgia. I grew up around that area, Newman, Georgia to be exact, and I have some stories to give you about my experiences with Peter Woods. You have my permission to post them on the website if you choose so. Let me know if you do. I've heard stories of a satanic cult practicing out in the woods, in an old shack where meat was stored. The name for it escapes me. My parents have confirmed this, and my mom says that those stories have been circulating since the 80s, before I was even born. A guy my friend knew was in one of the practicing cults, so the rumors are true. I've had some strange experiences on that road too. A group of my friends and I went to Peters Woods for some thrills about 5 or so years ago. We got out of the car, it was still running, and we're standing around waiting for something interesting to happen when we heard something move in the woods. We all turned towards the noise, and I saw a creature wrap its head around a tree trunk and lean around the tree to look at us. It had bright green eyes, and its fingers were long. We all freaked out and jumped in the car. After we calmed down, we compared stories and found that we had seen the same thing. We're not the only people to have seen that creature. One person with us had seen it before and had drawn it. One of my old coworkers lived near Peters Woods, and she described it to me one night while we were sharing spooky stories at work. The creature is usually 6.5 to 7 feet tall, with a lanky frame and long arms. It has green eyes, and I found out recently from a friend that it's a demon. From what I remember, there's lots of them rambling around Peters Woods. This friend has experienced them as well, but her incidents are totally unrelated. The person who had drawn this creature also told us of an extremely haunted 2-story house he and his friends used to frequent. He said you could stand on the porch and hear things moving on the upper floor, the lower floor, and in the backyard. Most of it he described as scuttling, or many things moving rapidly over the floor. He said he looked through the window of the front door, which apparently looked through to the back door, on more than one occasion, and he saw a black shape with bright eyes looking at him through the back door. When he found this particular house, there was nothing but the foundation and chimney left. It had burned down, but there wasn't any sort of evidence on the surrounding grounds and trees to show it. Nothing close to the foundation was scorched or marred in any way. My friend and I have psychic abilities, and I got the feeling that the place was so haunted by so many things, bad things, that it burned down to hide its secrets. I mentioned this to my friends, and my psychic friend felt the same thing. Many more things have been going on in those woods than a simple Amish girl in a hidden cemetery. The place is teeming with paranormal activity, most of it opened up by the satanic cults. I have visited the hanging tree several times when I was in my teen years. Anytime that I've been out there, it has always been very dreary. Even on the brightest of days, it is very gloomy. One Halloween night, about 15 of us went out in 3 separate vehicles. There were 5 of us in the truck that I was in. All of us were beside the driver's side door. At midnight, there was the most god-awful noise that came out of the woods. It sounded like a man that was screaming while he was getting his throat sliced. I can still to this day hear the noise in my head. I cannot make the noise, and the description that I gave is the best explanation that I can give. Needless to say, that in the 3 seconds flat, we were all in the truck and at the end of the road before we stopped to take a breath. I still have the scar on my leg from driving into the bed of the truck as the driver was pulling away. I've not been back there since. I did not hear screams or laughter, never heard someone's feet dragging on top of the vehicle or jumping on the vehicle, just the god-awful noise. Also, I would like to inform you that the Newport Hotel is haunted. I've never had a personal experience with these ghosts. The former owner, Jack, I don't remember his last name, has had experiences with them along with some past employees. Please know the above information is true and accurate to every letter of the word. I moved to the Airline Road area Back in 1999 with my parents before going off to college, one day I was wading along the Little Cotton Indian River with my fishing pole and came up to the Airline Bridge Road. A very bad odor like something was dead was filling my nose. Just under the side of the bridge, lying on the rocks below, was a dead dog which must have been hit on the road and thrown over the bridge. The body had been decomposing and was a real mess. The hair of the dog was often in piles, lying around the body. I quickly left and headed home. That evening, I was talking to a friend of mine which has lived in the area her whole life and had told me stories of this airline road bridge. While on the phone and outside in front of our house, I could hear a large dog barking back down through the woods towards the bridge. I told my friend on the phone about the dead dog I had seen earlier that day, and it must have been another dog feeding on the carcass. She laughed at me and told me again that the bridge was haunted and that I should go down there and check on the dead dog again. I built up the nerve and headed down towards the bridge. Using a spotlight, I overlooked the bridge at the rocks where the dead dog had died earlier, only now I didn't see anything down there. I walked down the side of the bridge to get a closer look. There was no body or bones left. I thought that another dog had just dragged out the carcass and that was it. Then I remembered the piles of the dog's hair that had been just lying around. To my surprise, there was no hair anymore either, just a clean rock surface. So at that point, I ran as fast as I could back to the house, and I can't help but to think, to this day, for some reason, that the dead dog had come back to life for the night. I took a buddy of mine down to the bridge the following morning, and the dog's body, the bones, and the hair were back on the rocks as if they had been there all along. Also one night, around midnight, I was driving my car across the bridge, and just after I came onto it, my headlights, interior lights, and my radio all shut off at once. The engine kept running, but all of my electronics had shut off. I floored the gas as hard as I could because I had heard about the car stories of the bridge. Once again, just after getting to the other side of the bridge, all of my electronics came back on. I had the car for another 4 years and never had another problem with any of its electronics. I've heard a story about the bridge and why it is haunted, if you ever like to hear it. Something about an old lady crossing it in a horse and buggy, way back when it was a wooden bridge, and the carriage fell off the bridge, killing the old lady on the rocks below. There's also a very old concrete building hidden in the trees right beside the bridge. Rumor has it that Kellytown was the first place around to have power, and this old building must have been part of that operation. The weird part is that there are no doors into this concrete building. It stands maybe about 25 feet tall on one side, and the other side runs into the side of the hill. The old roof is full of holes now, and I pity kids who try to walk onto it. It looks like a good place for someone to fall into and break their leg. The only way into the concrete building would be a long ladder. The inside looks as though it's full of leaves and other debris. I'd love to find out what's really inside the building. Or who. I remember that in 1964, and shortly after our baby, Lori, was born, my husband took me to see the spook light. It's outside Joplin, over the state line. We parked on a gravel road and waited about a half an hour. Suddenly, floating out of the woods, came the spook light. It floated out and down the road towards us like a ball of lightning, only on a much more erratic course. It got within 100 feet of our car, in the middle of the road, when it suddenly disappeared. Thank heaven. I'd heard from my husband's best friend that if touched your car, the paint would blister and peel, just like it did on his car when the light landed on his hood. My husband had been watching the spook light since he was a little boy, and said this was the closest he'd ever been to it. I've seen ball lightning before, and swamp gas. This was nothing like it. We returned every few weeks, and the performance was repeated, but it never got any closer before it just vanished. I can't tell you how long I've waited for someone to talk about this phenomenon. Thanks for reading. Hi, I'm a freshman at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. We've been named the most haunted place in Ohio and the 13th scariest place in the world by the television show Scariest Places on Earth that is shown on Fox Family Channel frequently. I've only had one personal experience so far here, but I've spent a lot of time researching and getting all the legends that center on our school and town, and I thought you might like to know some of them. The residence hall that I live in, Bush Hall, is one of the least haunted buildings on campus. Everyone who has lived here for years and years has heard strange sounds that no one can explain. It comes from the ceilings, and it sounds like there is someone in the room above dropping marbles on the floor, one by one, over and over. It's been said that it also sounds like drops of water, except heavier, perhaps blood. My roommates and I have heard these stories, along with most of the other girls in the building. It's also said that the footsteps follow people in the halls at night, and the water fountains turns on by themselves to give drinks to ghostly visitors. But I've never seen these things, nor do I know of anyone who has. The sound of dropping marbles happens in every building on campus that is supposed to be haunted, but in most of the other buildings, it sounds like hundreds of marbles all at once. They have tested all the piping and other structural things that might cause these noises, but no explanation has ever been found. In Jefferson Residence Hall, some students went into an abandoned and normally locked room back in 1996. Sitting at an old desk in the corner of the dark room was an older woman of perhaps 40 years. She wore conservative clothes and was described as looking very much like an elementary school teacher from the 50s. The residents at first didn't realize what they were seeing and greeted the woman, only then to realize that she was slightly transparent and floating an inch or so above her chair. The residents ran to tell their RA, and when they returned, the door was closed and locked, with no signs of anyone having been there. The dorm next to mine is Washington Hall. A few years ago, a girls' basketball team came to play our team and stayed at that dorm. They had a wonderful time, laughing and shouting all the time. On their way back home, their bus crashed and every member of the team died. They say you can hear them laughing and shouting in the halls and lobbies of the dorm. A few years ago, a student fell from her fourth floor window in Crawford Hall and died rather gruesomely. She has been seen walking about at dusk, and sometimes she talks to students. The hall has a history of unexplained noises, lights going on and off by themselves, doors opening and closing, and various other strange happenings. A girl died in her sleep at the Convocation Center a few years back, and a girl named Lisa, who has not heard the story, often woke up in the middle of the night screaming that someone was next to her in her bed. They later found out that it was the same room and the same bed that the girl had died in. Across the hall from that room, there was a girl who used to talk to her closet. Her roommates thought she was crazy. She left for the weekend once and told her roommates that her closet was angry and that they should be careful. After she left, the shades began to go up and down, books began to fly, chairs tipped, lights switched on and off, the TV changed channels, and the closet doors flew open and shut. When the girl returned and talked to the closet again, everything returned to normal. A boy also murdered his ex-girlfriend in one of the rooms in the 1980s, and it's said that she walks the halls at night, watching over the students. The scariest and most provable tale on campus happened in Wilson Hall. There was a girl who lived there who practiced in black magic. It was said that she could be heard chanting in strange tongues late at night, and a green light came from under her door. Then no one saw her for a long time. Finally, the RA got a key and opened the girl's room. The girl had slit her wrists, written satanic symbols all over the walls in her blood, and then hanged herself in the center of the room. They cleaned the room, painted over the walls with many coats of paint, and gave the room to 2 other students the following year. They didn't stay there long enough. The symbols and blood came back, and the room glowed green, drawers slammed, and ghostly screams were heard. Finally, the school's officials decided that the room was not safe for students to stay in, so they sealed off the room permanently. To this day, if you go to the room on the 4th floor, you can see a demonic face in the grain of the wood on the door. The story is traceable in the school's records. Ryan Hall is usually considered the most haunted building on campus. It is the oldest residence hall on campus still used as a residence hall. There's supposedly a ghost in the attic, a few on the second floor, and a 3 on the fourth floor, but I haven't been able to find the specific stories behind them, other than witnesses of apparitions, but there is no record of death there. You can't live in or around Athens without knowing about the 5 graveyards that form a perfect pentagon around the entire campus. The pentagon is commonly known as a symbol of magic and otherworldly happenings. It is used as a protection sometimes. The building that is at the very center of the pentagon is the only one on campus that has no tales of ghosts attached to it. They say it is protected by the pentagon. The graveyards are very strange in themselves. One of them has graves laid out north and south, instead of the normal east and west. One of them has a tree and a rock ridge that has rope marks on it from when they used to execute people by hanging. All the graveyards are reportedly haunted. They are a favorite place for cult activities and seances. They say that the Pentagon supplies the power to raise the dead. The cemetery at the Ridges, an old insane asylum, is especially spooky. Most of the graves have no names. They're either marked by numbers or nothing at all. There is a circle of unmarked graves with no apparent reason, and it is said that if you sit in the circle, you will be visited by spirits, and there are several tales of spirits following people home from the circle. The asylum has almost hundreds of ghost stories to itself. It was an old institution where hyperactive or slightly disturbed people were kept in solitary confinement and treated with shock therapy. It was shut down in the 80s because it was considered cruel treatment. Some of the patients can still be found in town. One works at the local racks, and another plays his violin on the street for the students walking by. Another stands on the streets and tells people they are living in sin and bound for hell. At any rate, you can hear screams in the halls of the asylum, and many other strange occurrences have been reported. The most popular tale is of an old patient named Marge. This story is solid proof to back it up. When they closed the asylum, they knew that the students and kids at the town would try to get in and explore, so as each section of the buildings were excavated, they were sealed shut. Marge was deaf and dumb. She exited the building, but then remembered that she had left a cherished possession behind. She asked permission to go back for it and was granted it. No one is sure what happened next. Either she got confused in the long twisting halls and could not find her way out, or simply forgot to come back out. But she was sealed in the building because everyone thought that she was out. She could not yell for help to the workers, not 10 yards outside the barred windows, because she couldn't talk. She took off her clothes, folded her arms across her chest, and eventually died of starvation. Her body was found when the building was reopened several years later. When they moved her body, there was a print on the floor, like a leaves on cement sometimes, where her body had lain. As hard as they scribbled, the stain is still there, in the shape of her body, and if you went on the tours they used to give of the asylum, you could see it. If you are a little determined, you can find a picture of it on the internet, on one of the haunted Athens sites. Some say that she walks the halls, looking for a way out and screaming in panic. The details of Marge and her prints can be found in the Athens City police records. Our school is built on old Indian territory. There is at least one Indian burial ground located under the Memorial Auditorium. There's also a story that is rarely believed about a headless buffalo that roams College Green. It has a story behind it, but it's so ridiculous it's hardly worth telling. There are more believable Indian legends surrounding the area though. So, there are as many of the ghost stories about the school and area as I've been able to tell and find and get details about. Some of them are probably completely untrue. Some are based on absolute research facts. October 23rd, 2001, midnight, Florida. Was twirling around in bed, trying to fall asleep. Tomorrow was going to be bulk pickup. Every 2 months, the garbage men come to pick up large items, such as furniture. I was getting rid of my little dresser. My mom went outside to get a few other things that I left inside it. I watched her walk back up to the house. I heard her slam the door closed. I believe she went into the bedroom to sleep. Here's the creepy part. The lights flashed on and off. I decided to peek through my window again, and there, outside, behind my dad's white car, I saw a white figure floating around in circles. I have pretty good vision and could make out a solid figure, headless, walking around. I dropped the window shade for a second, then reopened it. Gone. The figure was gone. It just disappeared. Now, these houses in our neighborhood were rather new, only about 11 to 14 years. No one inside it had died, except our neighbor. She was old. I heard she had heart failure or something, only about 6 months ago. That was near where I saw the figure. Also, my friend, who likes to gossip a lot, told me centuries ago this used to be battlegrounds. He also told me that some guy was buried somewhere close to my house, in this so-called battle. Although the story was a short one, I hope you enjoyed it. It sure scared the hell out of me, but I'm not really sure how I can explain it fully. I understand the history of what happened, the battlegrounds and all, but I'm not sure exactly what's going on. If you guys can help me out, I really appreciate it. I have always been fascinated by paranormal events, especially listening to and researching ghost stories. I've had several encounters throughout my life and thought that I would share a few with you. I was living with my parents and older brother in an ordinary looking house on the other end of the dead-end street in a city near Green Bay, Wisconsin. I could have been more than 4 or 5 years old when the events started happening to me in that house. The 3 rooms where things would happen were in the bathroom downstairs, in my bedroom at the top of the stairs, and down in the basement. Of course, these types of things always happen in the basement, don't they? In the largest room of the basement, my brother and I kept our toys. This room was our playroom, where we could be rambunctious while we played and wouldn't disturb my dad, who slept up on the 2nd floor during the daytime. He was a police officer that worked the graveyard shift. To get to the basement, there was a doorway to the stairs, leading down. To the left of this top of the stairs was the door leading to the backyard. The staircase was straight and was always dark, even with the lights on. I grew to become terrified of these stairs, especially if I were climbing down them alone. I always felt like someone was watching me at the bottom of the stairs. I never felt like it was an evil presence, but merely that it liked to scare children and tease them. I remember several times falling down the last few stairs, even when I would make considerable efforts to scoop my way down the last 5 steps. You know that motion, where kids kind of slide down each step on their bumps, rather than walking on their feet. My mother always thought that I was clumsy, despite pleading that I was indeed being careful on the stairs. I think that whoever was down there liked to trip me up on the last few stairs. It delighted in seeing me stumble and fall on my face. Know that it never tripped or pushed me from the top of the stairs, as this type of spill might have ended fatally for me. No, it was always a teasing sort of spirit, kind of like a way an older brother or sister plays tricks and roughhouses with their younger sibling. After stepping off the stairs, you walked straight and entered the playroom, which spanned over to the left. However, if you kept walking straight, there was a short door that led to a sort of closet where my brother and I kept our collection of board games. This room was always icily cold, to the point of being able to see your breath, even in the middle of the humid Wisconsin summers. I hated going near this room, often insisting that my brother or father go fetch the game when we wanted to play one. I guess I sort of deduced that whatever was tripping me on the steps lived in this room, and I didn't want to have any part of it. I guess I was scared that it would lock me in there or something. On to the other rooms. The bathroom was located on the 1st floor and was the only bathroom in the house. There was a frosted window that was above the bathtub on the wall opposite the door. One time, late at night, I went in there and saw the shadowy image of the shoulders and a head of a man in the window. It was a profile view, and he was doing what appeared to be working, swinging what looked like a sledgehammer over his shoulder with both hands. I just froze and stared at it in terror. I watched it for a moment, at first thinking it was my dad outside, but I knew that my dad wouldn't be up to doing anything like that in the middle of the night. He would have been at work anyway. Quickly, I forgot about having a need to use the bathroom and hightailed it up to my bedroom. It was there that I had the most lasting and terrifying experience of my childhood life. My bedroom was to the immediate right at the top of the wooden stairs that led upstairs. Down at the opposite end of the hall was my parents' bedroom, and in the center was a very small room that my mother used as a sewing room. My brother slept in a room downstairs. Since most of my toys were down in the playroom, my bedroom was fairly empty. I had a double bed, a dresser, and a small shelf that held my large collection of stuffed animals. There wasn't even a closet built in this particular room originally, and my father was in the process of constructing me one. All that was completed was a couple of drywall structures off to the wall to the right of my bed. He hadn't even installed a door yet. One night, I was sleeping peacefully on my side, with my back facing the unfinished closet, when I was awakened by a very sharp jab to my lower back, like someone was very forcibly poking me with their finger. It felt like a wake up and get out kind of poke. I instantly opened my eyes, initially thinking it was my brother picking on me. It poked me again, harder this time. I sat up in bed and looked around, but no one was even there. The air seemed really heavy around my bed, dense with a crackling sort of energy. I could still feel the sensation in the area of my back where the thing had poked me, kind of like when you bump into something and know it's going to leave a bruise. So I knew I hadn't been dreaming. Needless to say, I was absolutely terrified, and I leaped out of bed and tore off running to my parents' room. My mom consoled me and let me sleep with her that night, but that wasn't the end of it. The poking happened several times afterwards. My parents would never let me take more than one stuffed animal with me when I went to bed, so after they tucked me in, I would hop out of bed and grab handfuls of dolls and place them around me in the bed, a feeble attempt at making a stuffed animal cocoon, thus, or so I'd hoped, deterring the thing from poking me. Sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. I could never tell if it was the same entity that used to trip me in the basement, but its actions were similar in that it never wanted to harm me too badly. It just liked to frighten and tease. Well, after a long, unsatisfactory marriage, my parents were divorced, and I moved in with my mom and brother down to Texas to be near my mom's side of the family. Thankfully, I was out of the house, but I still built my shield of stuffed animals at night, up until I was about to start junior high school. Like I said, it had made a lasting impression upon me. To this day, I rarely sleep alone with my back to the area of the room where someone could walk up and poke me from behind. I never mentioned the incidents to my mother when I was young, for I was sure my parents would say I was dreaming, etc. When I was older, however, I'd mentioned it to her once while we were talking on the subject of ghosts, and she was dumbfounded by the experience that came out of my mouth. She revealed to me that she used to get odd feelings in the bathroom and kitchen of that house when she was home during the day, while Dad was asleep upstairs and the kids were at school, like she was being watched by an unseen presence, particularly when she would shower. She said she had always chalked it up to overactive imagination or some sort of psychological effect of being in an unhappy marriage to my father. I've never asked my brother if he had any strange experiences in that house. Perhaps I should. I never got a chance to do any research about the house, to learn about its history or previous owners. Now that I'm older, I like to do some digging and see what I can find about the house, if it's still standing. I've had some other encounters when I was older in junior high and high school in a house down in Texas, but I think I will save them for another time, as this post has become long enough. If anyone has any questions about my experience or has had similar things happen to them, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you, and I appreciate your reading. I was given your website address today and wish to share with you an experience I had in 1965. I'm in England. My name is Angie, and at the time, had no real idea that I was a medium. I was 22 at the time, staying with my two children at my parents' home in Didcot, Oxfordshire, England, until such time as my husband, who was in the Royal Air Force in Germany, could send for us. One day I had a letter to post Germany and realized that it was almost 11 a.m. The time the local post officer had its mail collected from mailbox outside the shop. I used my mother's bicycle and pedaled up to the box. There, counting mail on the front of his bicycle, was the postman, the mailman. The mailbox was open with a bunch of keys in the lock. In England, if the postman has collected the mail out of the box, he'll often refuse to take your letter. Silly, I know, but it's true. I quickly jumped off my bicycle and stood next to him. He did not look up, just kept thumbing through the mail, in a bag on front of his post bike. I said, "Have I missed a post, please?" The young postman did not look at me for a few seconds, then gave me a strange look and did not reply to my question. I was mad. I walked to the wall of the post office, threw my bicycle against that wall, turned, and got the shock of my life. No postman was there. Box was shot and locked, and this all in about 10 seconds. My first thought was, this can't be happening. I walked over to the box and saw that the letters were still in. I have no idea. Since those days, my clairvoyance has gone from strength to strength, and I now attend spiritualist churches, taking services in clairvoyant evenings as well as helping people who need it. This is my true story. Phantoms! Phantoms! I'm so glad to see you! It was 30 minutes before I could talk to you guys! I just heard rambling and stories of stories of stories and stories! Guys, I'm here! It's Phantom! Hi! I don't know what I'm doing, guys. Thank you so much again. I got to 30 minutes. That's why I'm excited for you guys, because it's 30 more minutes. Usually I do the 20 minutes if you're used to my channel. And if you're not, go ahead. Like, comment, and subscribe if this story has impacted you in some way. I meant to say video, but I'm back, guys. Anyway, guys, I know this video was a little late. Usually I upload Mondays and Fridays, and I missed Monday's deadline, but it was for a good reason, because I wanted to get a longer video out for you guys and wanted to be at my absolute best. For that, go ahead and share this. We're getting so close to 10K, guys. I really can't wrap my mind around it. And I feel so happy that we can do it. So we're going to continue that ride of roller coasters again through this channel up until 10K and maybe beyond if I'm good enough and not desperate enough. But I am desperate enough, so I am, that one guy. Anyway, I don't know what I'm saying still. Guys, thank you so much again for tuning in. I'm going to sign off. I'm not going to make this too long, but good night, good morning. I'll see you in the next video, and I'll see you guys with a load of dust. I still don't know what that means. Guys, I don't know. Okay. Love you guys.